linoleic acid, which is really the fat that we're pointing a finger at in this story, it is everywhere in animal fats, so there's no avoiding it. Of course, we're eating, orders of magnitude, I think 56,000% more now than we were 100 years ago. When we're getting it from refined foods and just straight kind of cooking oil, versions of soybean oil and canola oil, etc., we are not only getting way too much, of course, but even if we were getting more modest amounts, we're not getting it the way nature intended. When we eat linoleic acid from animal sources, it always comes with antioxidant vitamins, like, say, vitamin E. I think there's something kind of genius about this, where if you can get linoleic acid and keep it as linoleic acid, the body knows what to do with that. And in fact, Stephen Cunnane, who we often invoke in the low-carb realm because of his incredible work on ketones and Alzheimer's disease, found years ago that linoleic acid and the seed omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid are the highest burned fats in the brain for energy, and it makes them actually ketogenic. The brain makes its own ketones from these polyunsaturated fats, linoleic acid and alpha-linolenic acid. But it stayed as linoleic acid. In other words, it didn't turn into a lipid peroxide. And maybe that's because it had antioxidants to keep it clean. It helped maintain the integrity of that fatty acid. In contrast, when we're eating it from a refined source, not only are we eating too much, but let's put volume or consumption amount to the side, but we've robbed away the natural, perhaps, antioxidant mechanisms that would have allowed the cells of the body to just use the fat in its pure form. We've changed it now into a lipid peroxide. And that, to me, is the real heart of the matter. And where I cannot deny that linoleic acid has a problem beyond its caloric value, where they would say, now, soybean oil isn't really a problem beyond the fact that we just eat too much. I can nod my head to that a bit and acknowledge, yeah, we definitely eat too much. But I can't overlook the fact that it truly is the most readily oxidized, turning into a lipid peroxide of the lesser saturated or more saturated fats. This becomes a lipid peroxide very, very readily. And lipid peroxides are remarkably damaging or pathogenic molecules, where we know that these lipid peroxide metabolites from linoleic acid force a fat cell to grow through hypertrophy. It limits the potential for hyperplasia. And so if you have fat cells that are being told to grow because there's sufficient energy and sufficient insulin, you have to have both of those. If there's ample linoleic acid in its peroxide metabolites, it's forcing that growth to happen through hypertrophy, and that is a sick way to get fat. We are literally doing studies in my lab now looking at some of these linoleic acid metabolites and how they change mitochondrial function in muscle cells and fat cells. And it is not good. It is something that goes beyond the saturation of the fat and just the pure amount of calorie.
Omega-6 seed oils oxidize into lipid peroxide, a pathogenic metabolite that damages fat cells. Linoleic acid is everywhere. It's even in animal fat, so there's no avoiding it. We are eating 56,000% more now than 100 years ago. When we get it from refined foods or cooking oil, like canola or soybean oil, we are getting way too much and not getting it the way nature intended. When we get it from animal sources, it always comes with antioxidants like vitamin E. When you can keep it as linoleic acid, your body knows what to do with it. Dr. Bikman says, Stephen Cunnane discovered years ago that linoleic, omega-6, and alpha-linoleic, omega-3, oils are the highest burned fats in the brain for energy. The brain makes its own ketones from these. Linoleic acid from animal sources stays as linoleic acid. It does not turn into a lipid peroxide because of its antioxidants keeping it clean. When it is from a refined source, the antioxidant mechanisms have been robbed away. They are changed into a lipid peroxide. Dr. Bikman summarizes, Linoleic acid, we eat way too much, and it is mostly readily oxidized. It turns into lipid peroxide. Lipid peroxide are remarkably pathogenic molecules. Linoleic acid from refined and cooking oil sources produce lipid peroxide metabolites that force a fat cell to grow through hypertrophy, and they limit the fat cell potential for hyperplasia. If you have fat cells that are told to grow due to sufficient energy and insulin, they must have both. When they also have sufficient linoleic acid with its lipid peroxide, it is forcing growth through hypertrophy. And Dr. Bikman says, this is a sick way to get fat. He says, in my lab at BYU, we are studying these linoleic metabolites, how they change mitochondria function in muscle cells and fat cells. He says, it is not good. It goes beyond the saturation of the fat and the pure amount of calories.
Annotated and summarized, easy to share with loved ones. The description below the title for this video has these summary points.